Hello everybody, welcome back to the Warhammer 40k Iceberg. This is part 2, the Shallows. If you want to know more about this, definitely go check out part 1 to get some more info on this. But yeah, we'll just go ahead and jump right into it. Alright, going on to the first subject of this iceberg, we have the Wolfen. So the Wolfen is not like a faction or anything, it is a disease that comes with being a space wolf. Now I'll give you a little bit of backstory of what a space wolf is first. Space wolves are the 6th Legion. Their Primarch is Leman Russ, and they come from the homeworld of Fenrir's, Fin something. So as you know from my last iceberg video, Primarchs and their Space Marines for their Legion get their DNA from their Primarch, right? The Space Marines get their DNA from their daddy Primarch, and then he gets his from the Emperor. So when the Emperor was making the Space Wolf faction leader, Leman Russ, they gave him a genetic modification to make him a little different, right? A little special. Mixed his DNA with wolf, right? Like wolves. I don't know how they did it. So with that genetic like malfunction kind of thing, not really. They can drink this herb that comes from their planet that kind of drives them crazy and insane if they drink it. The thing is, they will become very powerful and kind of like superhero-ish if they take it and can resist the urge to go absolutely mad. So not all Space Marines can resist this, but most of them are able to. What happens is they take the drink and they kind of dump them on the other side of the planet, and they're like, yeah, good luck, get back to us, all right, have fun. And then while he's in the middle of going through this excruciating, painful process, he has to also fight off anything that he comes across, right, that'll try to kill him, because it's just throw him into the woods, right? And some people don't make it, you know, but it's kind of like their initiation process. Anyway, that's kind of the Wolfen mutation. But yeah, we'll just move on to the next. When Sly Marbo goes hunting, they don't call it hunting, because hunting implies there's a chance of failure. Sly Marbo goes killing. Alright, next up we got Sly Marbo. So if you can't tell, Sly Marbo is basically the Chuck Norris of the 40k universe. He was a Catachan soldier. If you remember from my last video, I talked about that a little bit. The world of Catachan is basically like a jungle that a lot of people have gone to, their military has to take over, and the soldiers there are just kind of tougher because they have to deal with this excruciating environment, right? So Sly Marbo is an exceptional one of these soldiers. He is basically a one-man army. He has gone up against thousands and just taken them out with ease. He comes through. He is basically a Chuck Norris mixed with Rambo, mixed with Terminator kind of guy. You know, he's just insane. There's a lot of stories about him. Pretty much any Chuck Norris joke you can just replace with Sly Marbo, which what I did. Yeah, that's Sly Marbo, and we'll just move on to the next one. Next up, we have the Horus Heresy. The Horus Heresy is a gigantic subject to go into. It's going to be a little bit long, so strap in and get ready for this part. I'll tell you exactly how long it is. There are at least there's 68 books on this freaking thing. There's 55 novels, like a comic book, and some audio novel things. There's just an insane amount of content and books and crap about this one subject. It is basically the endgame of the 40k universe. Alright, so I gotta give you quite a bit of backstory here to get this going, okay? So, base run through, Primarchs are the sons of the Emperor. They are genetic kind of clones, kind of son things, right? Not nearly as powerful as the Emperor himself, but still quite powerful. 10 times more powerful than a Space Marine, for sure. So when the Emperor was creating this Primarch initiative, right? The Chaos Gods were kind of like, ooh, that sounds bad for us. So we're kind of gonna just spread those guys out throughout the galaxy so you can't find them. So they're basically babies when they got sent to their worlds. So this whole Great Crusade, I believe it's called, is what the Emperor had to go through to go and find all of his Primarchs. Trust me, this is all related. So the first one he found was Horus. Horus was a lot like the Emperor, and they got along very, very well and became like best buds, really, honestly. They had a great father-son bond. The Emperor loved him very much. Loved him more than any other Primarch they would find. A little bit of a favorite child, So anyway, after finding Horus, they kept going. Horus helped him go find his brothers, the other Primarchs, and they eventually, after a while, got them all back, and they were always good. They got every single one of them back. Kind of after they got everyone together, Horus was out. I forgot exactly what he was doing or fighting, but he was in a fight, and he got really, really injured. It's not super important, but he got injured, right? And this guy named Erebus was like, hey, yo, man, I can give you this, like, I can do this little, like, ritual, right, to heal you up. All good. And Horus, who was there, like, dying, right, was like, yeah, man, whatever, just give me freaking, just heal me, right? So, Erebus, not a great guy, by the way, kind of implanted this this vision in his head about the Emperor eventually destroying humanity and giving it over to chaos, basically. So after Horus was healed up and ready to go, it was also around this time that Erebus kind of let him get corrupted by chaos, just a little bit, you know. They influence him, not exactly like take him over or nothing, but they were like influencing his decision. So after that, Horus is like, okay, I kind of got to deal with this Emperor. He's not a good guy. I mean, I kind of got to take him out, and I can take over the Imperium of Mankind and lead them to salvation, right? So in his eyes, he was doing the right thing. The Emperor, not being a great dad, was also kind of a jerk to a lot of his Primarchs, to his sons. So Horus kind of got him to convert. So these will be known as traitor legions. After he convinced all of them to join, they started going to war after a little bit. We'll get to one of the battles that kind of started it off later in the Iceberg. Yeah, eventually it culminated into this giant battle against the emperors, the loyalists, which are the legions that were loyal to the empire, you know, the Imperium, and the traitors, right? There's a lot of battles, a lot of stuff happened in between this time. I'm skipping so much. Eventually it ended when the Emperor found Horus's ship. Horus kind of wanted him to, and he dropped his shields. So when Horus dropped his shield, the Emperor saw this. He's like, oh, okay, we can teleport onto the ship. It was kind of a bait on Horus's part, and you kind of wanted him to. So the Emperor and one of the Primarchs, Sanguinius, the Blood Angels, they teleported on, right? And then Horus kind of led him through the maze of his ship by, you know, narrowing the ways to him so his men could fight him little bits at a time, right? Whittle them down, right? It didn't really work on Daddy Imps, right? But eventually, Sanguinius, who was with him, got up to Horus and battled him significantly. He didn't do a whole lot. He kind of got bodied, but he did get one good strike, kind of cracked. I think it's debated on whether this happened or not, but I'm pretty sure. Cracked like the chest armor. He like got a hole in there. Didn't really do a whole lot to Horus, but he got that one strike, right? But eventually Horus just psychically blasted and killed Sanguinius, right? Dead. Not good. And that's when Daddy Imps walked in and saw this happen. They walked in, it's like, ooh, not cool, man, not cool. So I'm gonna have to beat you the freak up now, right? So they go to battle, and honestly, Horus was no match for the Emperor. He kind of got bodied, right? But the Emperor he couldn't land the killing blow on his son, his favorite child, right? He couldn't do it. He couldn't kill him. So it kind of gave Horus a chance to badly wound the Emperor, right? Again, this is a huge fight, in a book, I'm sure, but I'm really whittling it down here. Yeah, he eventually injured the Emperor pretty bad, right? Oof. So while the Emperor's there lying down, Horus goes in to finish the killing blow, right? Goes in to kill him. And his father still has this compassion for him. He can't kill his son, right? But then this, it's debated who actually did this, but I believe that it was a guardsman walked between Horus and the Emperor, right? This little soldier guy, right? Who's nothing to Horus. He stands between him and the Emperor and says, "No, Horus, I will not let you kill the Emperor. You're wrong, right?" So Horus, being the insane, corrupted by chaos man that is, just blasts the dude with his psychic energy and kills him, right? Just brutally, and laughs about it, right? Haha, murder, you're dead. And of course, the Emperor, seeing this, realized that the son he once knew is gone. He's no longer his son. He's corrupted by chaos, and he finally gets the will to land a killing blow on his son. So he uses all of his psychic energy that he can muster, which is a lot, by the way. He's like one of the most powerful psychers in the 40k universe. And it's believed that he was able to do so much damage with it because the little crack in his armor that Sanguinius landed on him. He absolutely decimated Horus with one psychic blast, basically deleting him from existence. Nearly just killed him so freaking hard. It's I can't overstate how hard he killed Horus here. But anyway, after Horus's death, the Emperor was put onto the Golden Throne to keep the Emperor alive. So that's where the Emperor is now. He kind of just looks like a dead guy sitting there on his Golden Throne, but they sacrifice thousands of psychers every day to keep him alive. Yeah, so basically the Emperor is kind of dead, basically. Horus is dead, and his legion, all of his, he was the Primarch of the Luna Wolves, not to be confused with the Space Wolves, different legion. That is the super blown down, basic version of the Horus Heresy. Again, it is a huge event, and if it interests you, definitely go check it out on YouTube. There are like hundreds of videos about it, but I'm like scraping the surface. That's enough of my rambling for the Horus Heresy. Let's go ahead and move on to the next subject. Next up, we have the Servitors. So Servitor is a catch-all word, like the word droid in the Star Wars universe. When I say droid, you can think of many things: R2-D2, to battle droids, to droidicas, to anything. But it's kind of a catch-all word because Servitors are essentially the droids of the 40k universe, but with a little kind of psychotic twist. It's basically a human being, like a little slave or like a criminal or something, right? Are brainwashed, broken down, and put into a machine to run it, right? Like they are, they're just like used as droids, but they use a human consciousness to run these machines. Now, the reason for that is, this will probably come up later in the Iceberg, so I'm only going to briefly talk about it. But a long time ago in humanity's history, there was a war between humans and the AI they created. So it was this huge war that lasted for like 50,000 years, something like that. I don't remember. Humanity got kind of done with AI after they won, so they used the Servitors instead. Because what is a human gonna do when he's brainwashed and is set for one task for his entire life? It's a incredibly morbid thing, but yeah, basically they're just the droids of the 40k universe, but there's a human inside of it. Next up, we have the Space Wolves are Furries entry. I'm thinking this is more of a theory. Maybe it's true. It's kind of just a theory that Space Wolves are kind of furries. There's not a whole lot to talk about here. I'll just go ahead and move on to the next subject. Next up, we have the Great Game. So the Great Game is kind of a big subject as well. The Great Game is a war that's going on between all of the Chaos Gods for dominance in the warp. I talked in the last video about the Chaos Gods. We got Khorne, we got Nurgle, we got Slaanesh, and we got Tzeentch, right? Tzeentch. I can't hold up 4 fingers. Tzeentch. In times where these guys aren't working together on something, they're usually fighting each other, and that's what's known as the Great Game. The warp is kind of their battleground for this war, and they're always fighting each other. Some Chaos Gods like the different ones more and less. Like, I'm pretty sure Khorne hates with all of his fiber and being Slaanesh. None of these Chaos Gods can really win the Great Game, because if it were to happen, all the energy would be kind of like so disturbed and messed up that it would destroy the warp itself, causing humans and any other race who accesses the warp for travel to no longer be able to. So it's kind of this thing where we don't really want any of the Chaos Gods to beat the other. It's kind of like this impossible, like terrible thing that would happen. That's pretty much the great game, so I'll go ahead and move on to the next subject. Next up, we have Istvaan III and V. So Istvaan III and V are planets in the Istvaan system. So I'm assuming also that these entries are for the battles that took place on them. Kind of the only thing that really happened on these planets. So these events took place before the Horus Heresy kind of kicked them off, really. When Horus was getting all of his traitor legions to join, right? So he eventually got them all together, and then about a third of each of the legions didn't want to betray the Imperium of Man, or had no knowledge of it, or just were like, no, we're loyal. We're loyal to the Imperium of Man, right? So what Horus did for all those Space Marines that didn't want to betray, he kind of put them all on this planet known as Istvaan III, and just virus bombed them and decimated them almost entirely. There was one guy who survived, I forget his name, but he survived to go tell the Emperor and everybody that Horus is a traitor and is coming to kill the Emperor, right? And take over. So that's the Istvaan III. Istvaan V takes place after that. So after that guy got away and went to go tell the Emperor's like, ooh, that's not good, man. We gotta nip that in the bud, right? So I'm gonna go send a couple guys to go deal with it and take out Horus and the traitors that were with him. They didn't know all the legions that betrayed them, the Word Bearers and the Alpha Legion. They didn't know that those two specifically betrayed them yet. So they arrive on Istvaan V, and this great battle starts. It's a huge battle, lots of people dying. The loyalist side kind of starts losing, so they start pulling back, right? They're like, okay, guys, let's pull back a little bit, let's regroup. So they're pulling back, and they see the Alpha Legion and the Word Bearers and one more, I forget, but they're like, oh, what's up, guys? Yeah, we're just pulling back. And then they're like, oh yeah, we're kind of with those guys you're fighting. We're betraying you guys as well, so die. It was this huge massacre known as the Drop Site Massacre, where they killed a lot of loyalists there, and it wasn't great. But that's what really kicked off the Horus Heresy and the Civil War from the Imperium of Man. So that's kind of like the whole subject of Istvaan III and V. That's all I'm going to talk about for now. So let's move to the next subject. Next up, we have the Loyalties of Alfarius and Omegon. This one, I'm not going to go take too long on because it kind of confuses me why it's here. It's pretty obvious that Alfarius and Omegon betrayed the Imperium. They are both simultaneously the Primarch of the 20th Legion, the Alpha Legion. So they're very tricky, they're tricksters, they're into espionage and crap like that, right? They want to be sneaky, they want to not be known. So I'm guessing that's what this is talking about, like if they are actually betrayed or if they're just pretending to be. But I'm pretty sure they're a corrupt legion now anyways, so that seems pretty obvious to me, but I guess you could debate that yourself. Next up, we have the Orks are fungi. So I messed up in the last video and already talked about this a little bit, so I'll just briefly glance over what this is again. Orks are not your typical biological carbon-based life form. They are basically these spores of fungus come out and then they turn into orcs over time, right? They're kind of like grown more rather than born. Once an orc dies, he turns into this fungus that eventually grows into an orc. It's not known if they keep their consciousness through the transference, but they're very stupid, so it's really hard to tell if they even realize what happened. Yeah, they're kind of just this weird fungus-based life form. It's very strange. Next up, we have Commorragh, aka the Dark City, which I will be referring to it as now because I don't know how to pronounce this word. The Dark City is the city of the home of the Dark Eldar. There are not very many Dark Eldars in the 40k universe left, but the reason they are still alive and haven't been hunted down and destroyed by any faction yet is because they reside within the Webway. The city resides in the Webway. So you might be asking what the Webway is. The Webway is a pocket dimension, sort of, inside of the warp, or uses the warp to hide itself. So let's say you just hop into the webway, right? You are going to be very lost. It is a maze-like dimension where you cannot find your way anywhere without a map towards the Dark City, which the Dark Eldar have, so they can kind of just come and go as they please. But any other faction that tries to go there is going to get lost and not be able to find it. So that's just kind of the Dark City itself. So if you want to know more, go ahead and look up a YouTube video. I'm sure there's plenty on it, but that's all I'm going to go over in this one. So on to the next. Next up, we have the War in Heaven. The War in Heaven is a battle between these three races. I kind of accidentally talked about this again in the last video, so I won't spend too much time. So this is between the Necrons, the Cretan, I believe it's Cretan pronounced that way, either that or Cretan, something like that, and the Old Ones, right? So I won't talk too much about the Old Ones because they are the next subject in this iceberg. Real quick, I'll talk about the whole thing in and of itself, right? So long time ago, like 60 million years ago, the Necrons were a organic species, right? And they were kind of being messed with the Old Ones. As the Old Ones like, ooh, freak you, get out of here, man. Like, we hate you, right? So the Necrons, not wanting to die, obviously, were like, hey, yo, Catan guys, let's team up and beat the freak out of these guys, right? And that's what happened. They did, and they killed the Old Ones. But then after that, the Catan kind of tricked them, kind of maybe like, hey, give us your souls and we'll make you metal bodies. And that's what happened. So that's why the Necrons are these like humanoid, like these cyborgs kind of guys, just men made of metal, right? I talked about them in the last video, so more on them back then. But it's kind of just this huge battle that happened between those two, or those three factions. But yeah, we'll just end that there and we'll go talk about the Old Ones. Next up, we have the Old Ones. So the Old Ones, like I was talking about before in the last one, their main like stake in this universe was the battle of the War in Heaven, right? Their War in Heaven, right? So the Old Ones are actually the oldest race in the 40k universe. They have been around for, since the beginning of time, it seems like. They are a reptilian, cold-blooded race, right? They were the most technologically advanced, the most psychically capable beings to ever exist. But they were actually all wiped out in the War of Heaven. They were actually destroyed, and I believe there's no trace of them left. These guys, they're pretty cool faction, but they're way gone, so they're not really talked about much anymore, besides the War in Heaven, obviously. But that's kind of a breakdown of what they are and where they are, so they're dead. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, next up we have the theory that the shamans created the Emperor. So this is a pretty big theory I think most people go with, but this is just a theory in the 40k universe. The shamans were basically the psychers of the olden times, right? Before humans became civilized. They were like their priest and their shamans, right? They were the shamans. And they used to be able to just reincarnate with their psychic energy to like the next generation and just live forever, basically, keep their memories and whatnot. But as humans became more civilized and or like got civilization up and became more of a prevalent thing, they kind of, humans got more greedy, more disgusting, Once we were getting into that stage, they kind of started losing their power and weren't able to reincarnate. So they were getting worried that they wouldn't be able to lead humanity any further, right? So eventually they all got together and were like, hey, we got to come up with a plan to because this isn't going to work. We're all going to die out pretty soon and then humanity will be doomed, right? So they eventually all got together and decided the best thing to do is all kill theirs and use their souls to create a new being, the Emperor of mankind. So that's just a theory of Warhammer theory. that's just a theory that I think most people go with, honestly. I'm not sure about it quite, but yeah, you can believe what you want. But yeah, we'll just go on to the next. Next up, we have the Black Rage and the Red Thirst. So both of these are genetic conditions for the Space Marine Legion, the Blood Angels. Their Primarch is Sanguinius, who in current times is dead, as you can remember me talking about earlier, died to Horus. But yeah, so we'll start off with the Black Rage first. Black Rage is a genetic disorder that came after Sanguinius died, because they kind of lost his DNA in the whole Horus Heresy. So they had to get it from his dead body, right? They had to get his DNA from his dead body. So any Blood Angel that came after the Horus Heresy and was made after, because they're all being made all the time, right? They're like clones from Star Wars. But anyone that came after that kind of has this disorder called the Black Rage, where if they're not thinking about it, if they're not paying attention and making sure they're not succumb to this Black Rage, which is when they're not paying attention, they will remember. They will get like the memories of this battle. And if I remember, Sanguinius was killed with like this huge psychic blast from Horus, and it left like this little, kind of messed with his DNA a little bit. So anyone that doesn't like pay attention and like keep themselves in check will go just absolutely mad and just like kill everything around them, just like the Wolfen, right, from the Space Wolves. So what the chapter does with these people is they lock them in a tower at their homeworld called the Tower of the Lost, is where they kind of lock them all up and then just let them go insane. It's like their psychiatric ward, basically. It's not really known what they do there, if they're like studying it or what. But yeah, that's kind of the Black Rage. So we'll go on to the Red Thirst. So like I was saying, each legion has its own genetic modification, like the Space Wolves, they're kind of like wolf-like. But these guys, the Blood Angels, are basically vampires. They've been messed with to where they have like vampiric ability. So they have fangs and stuff. They're all pale and white, like pale white skin, right? So they also have a enormous like thirst for blood, and they have to get the blood from something they just killed. That's why the Blood Angels will really they love hand-to-hand combat. They really try to get as much as that as they can, so they can eat the blood from their victims. Otherwise, they will also just go insane if they don't eat enough over enough amount of time, right? So they also will go insane, and they'll also send them to the Tower of the Lost. And it's also unknown what they do with them there, but I'm guessing like study them and stuff, right? But that's the quick and short of it from the Black Rage and the Red Thirst. On to the next up, we have the Fall of the Aeldari, and the birth of Slaanesh. So I also made a mistake and talked about this in the last video as well. I'm going to try not to do that in this video as much, but we'll see. So the Fall of the Aeldari is an event in the Warhammer universe where basically the elves, the Eldars, used to be the dominant force in the galaxy, where they had people spread through almost every world and just had a humongous population, and definitely could have killed any of the factions that are alive now in the 40k universe, right, in the current era. But a long time ago, in like 10,000 years before now, like the 30th millennia, they kind of just got too bored with themselves and like just took over the galaxy too well, and then they were bored, and so they resorted to just outright just torturing people out on the street and all that junk, right? Just trying to have an excess of emotions, right? So where they could just feel something, basically. And you can imagine widespread, galaxy-wide people doing that on the street is, yeah, not great. Just torturing people, but eventually led to the birth of a chaos god, a new one called Slaanesh, who is the newest chaos god in the universe, right? And this event had horrendous applications in the universe, right? Repercussions in the universe. It also killed like 95% of the Aeldari, which is not great for them. That's why there's very few of them even left. And also kind of just shut the warp down for a little bit. So the humans that are around, the Necrons, anyone who wanted to use the warp during this time couldn't, because it was like closed off at this point. So people that relied on transport of food or communications at this point through the warp were just left abandoned, and there was nothing they could do, because that's the main transport in the 40k universe, is going through the warp. So that kind of just wrecked everything for everybody. Had trillions dead across the galaxy. But yeah, that's the fall of the Aeldari and the birth of Slaanesh. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next. I'm going to pass out. Next up, and last but not least, is the Rubric of Ahriman, I believe is how you pronounce it, but it sounds cool, so that's how I'm going to say it. So the Rubric of Ahriman. So I'm going to go a little backstory on this real quick. So Ahriman is a sorcerer from the Legion of the Thousand Suns. The Thousand Suns is I believe the 15th chapter of the Space Marine Legions. And the Thousand Suns' Primarch name is Magnus the Red. He's their Primarch, their leader. So every Primarch has their own genetic modification, as we know. Magnus was one of the Traitor Legions, and his power was kind of like psychic energy, right? He was a little bit better than all of his brothers at psychic energy and controlling that. Obviously not as good as the Emperor of Mankind, but still more powerful than his brothers, right? But anyway, he was one of the Traitor Legions who succumbed to Chaos's corruption, mainly Tzeentch's corruption. And it was kind of a bad side effect, because all the Thousand Suns Space Marines would just kind of turn into these Odric monsters, right? This Stranger Things looking monster thing, right? Not great. So they would eventually just turn into those guys, lose their mind, and then just go insane. Not good for them, obviously. No one wants that. So Ahriman, one of the sorcerers, was like, "Hey, we gotta do something about this, right?" So he went to the Book of Magnus, which is where Magnus kind of kept all of his spells and stuff, right? He looked at that for years and studied it, and eventually he came up with this his own spell. He called it the Rubric of Ahriman, right? So he eventually got enough sorcerers together to do this spell. It was supposed to fix like the corruption, because Ahriman he didn't like that they were a traitor legion, right? He didn't like chaos and all that, which is good. So he had a good intent, trying to stop them from turning into these things, right? But eventually, after doing this spell, it kind of just killed all of the Space Marines, the 1,000 legions on the planet. It just kind of killed them all, like disintegrated them, and actually just destroyed the Thousand Suns Legion. And yeah, he stopped them from being able to turn into these guys by killing them, basically. And that wasn't exactly the intended outcome. So he did kind of another spell that when the first spell happened, it kind of trapped their souls inside of the armor of every Space Marine. Kind of trapped their souls in the armor. And eventually, the second spell kind of brought those guys to life. Kind of like a soul-powered armor, right? It was just this empty armor, but it was powered through the soul of the Space Marines that were in them. And it's kind of this huge tragedy for the Thousand Suns, because there's not very many of them left now because of it, and they're all just empty suits. So now, for the Thousand Suns, the sorcerers kind of control their little legions, their little chapters of the 1,000 Suns Space Marines, and now they're kind of like mindless beings, right? Where when they're commanded to do stuff, they kind of remember that they're alive, kind of. They don't remember much about their past anymore. It's kind of a horrifying thing, and definitely wouldn't want it to happen to you. But when they're not giving orders, they kind of just sit there and just aren't alive. Like, it's just the soul being stagnant and not really being there. So It's not great for them, definitely, but the sorcerers that are fine kind of just control them and tell them what to do. But anyway, that's the Rubric of Ahriman. Yeah, next to the outro. Whew, all right, that was that was a lot, but yeah, that was the second tier, the shallows, if you will, of the iceberg, the biggest iceberg I could find, by the way. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If everything works out, this video was edited by Kip and probably a little bit by me. Thank you very much, Kip, for editing all this mess, because I'm lazy and never get to it. In fact, I recorded the first video nearly 2 months before I finished editing it and released it like last week. So after we get this video out, I will be recording the third tier. So definitely subscribe and stay tuned for that. If you really like the video, don't forget to leave a like. And yeah, if you're coming back for that third video, just subscribe and it'll pop up right on your phone when it comes. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching, if you stick around. The next iceberg video will definitely be even more in-depth. But sorry if this ran a little long, guys. But yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you around. Bub signing out. Boom bop, 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 dippity boom bop, ba doo ba, boom bop, 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 dippity boom bop, ba doo ba, boom bop, 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 dippity boom bop, ba doo ba.